Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to class. As it says, it's CAD CAM for holiday light shows. I focus a lot on creating props. Mainly, I do it for me. I like to have my own unique things, and it brings out a lot of creativity that I usually am a very technical person, so it's hard for me to make creative things, and this has helped me a lot. I also use this a lot to make 3D parts, and not just for my light show, but if I want to design something and make it on 3D, I have everything here I need to do. And it's generally, for me, it's better than going on Thingiverse and finding something that you kind of like. So we're gonna go over why you would want to do it, what you need. Uh, we'll go through making a custom prop and a custom 3D part. And what I like about this that's exciting to me is I like to do custom props, and I like to teach, and I like to learn. So I just like to be able to give back to the community, as a lot have done for me. And about me, I started this journey on the light show the day after Christmas 2020 with a couple ESP8266 as a power supply and some strip lights. Just downloaded X lights and got things figured out. And then I found out I needed some better controllers. What I like to do besides lights, I like to spend time with my family. I have 3 adult kids and a 3-year-old granddaughter that is just a blast to hang out with. I'm big into gaming, although I've since I've started this hobby, I have hardly played any games. And I like to do CNC working and sorry, woodworking and designs. And something that not a lot of people know is I did a skydive from 18,000 feet over here on the Space Coast, and I highly recommend doing it one time. I don't know if anybody knows that guy on in the picture, not the Scott guy, but the other guy. If you do, say so in the chat. So last year, I think it's a small show. It looks bigger, but pixel wise, it seems like a lower count. Just under 10,000, not counting my P5 panel for both my Halloween and Christmas shows.
Connect your fog machine to a controller. You add the processor. You add the fog machine as a prop and X lights, and then you can add the DMX elements into a sequence. It sounds simple, but it took a lot of work to get it to work. So the hard part was really connecting the bobbles to the controller. The old school way to do it, the way I had it done, was you have to have a controller with the DMX port. I've got a Falcon, so that has the built-in DMX port. But then we have to build a wire and connect it to the port in the controller. The new school way is give David Peace some money, because David, the Experience Lights, now has a pixel to DMX.
Sean Woods, you're unmuted, buddy.
Machine, and you can hook it up to a.
Thank you. Here are a couple of my props that I've done. I did this clownfish. This is actually my second version of it. The first time I did it, I made it a 4mm Coro, and it was black. And it looks good in the show, but statically during the day, it don't look like much. So this one I masked and painted. I have a newer version that I'm going to come out, but I just haven't had time to do it yet. The topper is another custom one I did. I actually had someone want me to cut one for them, and I somehow lost my file, so that's unfortunate. But here are two of probably one of my favorite props, the singing ghost that I made and the rocket. I did the rocket because I do live here on the Space Coast, so it just makes a lot of sense to have a rocket. So we're going to cover why or why not to make your own props, maybe even 3D parts, what you need, and then we're going to go through the process of creating a custom prop from scratch. And that is from drawing it to coming up with the machining to putting it into X-Lights. And a 3D part it'll be a basic part, just like a spacer to use like for a Falcon controller. So why would you want to make your own parts? Well, I know for a fact shipping is killer, especially if you want to just order one part, you know, or one prop. Uh, Sometimes you can't get what you want, and that could be a creative thing or just a vendor don't have it. I can tell you, like right now, if you have a custom idea for a prop, you probably can't get it through a vendor because it's the busy season, and I'm sure a lot of the vendors are just slap full with the customs. Um, so if you have the equipment, you might as well use it. And then, like for me, the DIY, I really like having a custom show. I mean, I still have a lot of like Biscoyo and EFL props, but I'm still slowly adding uh, my own things to them to give it that uniqueness to it. So why would you not? Well, like I said, there's some really great props out there already. And some, like I said, and some vendors earlier in the year will allow you to send them ideas and they can create them. I know Biscoyo is a really good company that likes to do that. Um, if you don't have the equipment or know-how, or you just don't want to make your own items, which is perfectly okay. So things you need, CAD CAM software. I use Fusion 360. I've been using it for 5 years now. It's reasonably priced. You can start, I believe, for 3 years on a free license. They do limit what you can do, but for what I use it, a lot of things aren't limited. It is a CAD and CAM package together. I know a lot of other things you have to design it and then use another software to do your tool paths. There's a ton of YouTube tutorials, and I've had some great support from Autodesk, who makes Fusion, and they also make AutoCAD and some other big software packages like that. Another thing you're gonna need is a CNC machine. So you need to either have your own or get access to one. There are maker spaces throughout the country that have them. Unfortunately, I do not have one nearby me that has a big enough machine. All the ones around me have an X-Carve, which I just sold. So it didn't really help me for the bigger things that I want to do. And as it says, I've just finished building a CNC. I still have to get it all tuned up. So here's my old machine, an X-Carve. It had a cut area just under 30 by 30 inches. The new machine I just finished building can do 50 by 98. So I can put a full sheet of plywood or even Coro on it and make the bigger props that I want without having to do what's called tiling, which is extremely difficult on uh, a smaller machine, especially with the Coro. I've done it a few times and I've just never been perfectly happy with it. So materials, chloroplast, I use 10 millimeter. There's all sorts of different varieties of it. There's just some regular fruit. There's the X flute, which is really strong, and it's very hard. It's harder to cut, but it's still cuttable. Usually have to get up with a vendor to a distributor to get the 10 millimeter. You can order it from Home Depot and have it shipped. It's a little more. They have 4 millimeter Coro that is available usually like at Home Depot, and they even have 4x8 sheets of that. And you can say take two 4 millimeter sheets and glue them together and cut them. But I think it's just stronger to use a single sheet. For the bits, I used an Amana 43600, which is a straight flute, single 2 flute, straight cut bit, because the X-Carve had a router, so I was only able to cut at 16,000 RPM. So I was literally limited on what bit I could use. Now I use a 1/8 inch zero flute compression bit that actually Jackie recommended. And the little bit of testing I've done, it works great. I cut a lot faster and it's a lot cleaner. For 3D printers, I have a Ender 5 Pro, which is a FDM standard printer, and then a Hallett one, which is a resin printer. I don't typically use the resin printer for the lighting stuff. I might like print parts for controllers, or like maybe a Raspberry Pi case or something like that with it. But if I actually design props for the 3D printer, I usually use the Ender 5 and PETG filament because it is more sunlight resistant, especially here in nice sunny Florida. Because when I first got my printer, my wife was being nice and I had printed some daisies, and she printed them out of PLA, and I put them out there and they didn't last the first couple weeks. They all got distorted from the heat. PETG holds up a lot better to that. So as an overview, we're going to draw a design. We're going to create a 3D model. We'll create the tool paths for the machining, or we'll create an STL for the 3D printing. Then you send it to this machine, you set up your machine, you cut the print, and then you can create X models using a DXF. You don't do that for 3D printing. Or say you want to just use the CAD side, you can basically use some of these steps and like say create a DXF and print it out on paper, tape it to it, and then like hand trace it and cut it. I've seen that done. I actually did that when I first started. It does work. And if we have time, we can go over some advanced tips and tricks, like the 3D spacer that I will use for the 3D printing. I have what's called parameters that allow you to change the 3D model on the fly, which is great for if you have different items you need to just resize it for. You can just resize it in a few seconds and then make a new file to send to your 3D printer. Another thing you can do is you can cut multiple props at the same time. So if, like I plan on making some small I cannot talk today. Small yard markers, it's just markers to put along the front of my yard to help eliminate people coming in the yard. And I believe they're like 12 inches tall. I could probably cut 20, 30 on a single sheet. And the using the cam, I can just create a pattern and it will do all the work for me. And Jackie says you could send the CAD to your vendor, and that is true. Designing the X model is a very time consuming as yeah, it takes a lot of time. So yeah, this is the questions. So we actually have a good amount of time. So if anybody has any questions now, we can cover a little bit about that. But other than that is going to be a demo. Why not VCarve? I have never used VCarve, and that would be why. Um, there are some wood things I think VCarve would be very good for me. Like I want to do the photo carving, and I know that's a separate software, but it's I know it's easier to use that for VCarve, I believe, than Fusion to generate your tool paths. And also for Fusion, Nick, I can create STL files. I don't believe you can do that with VCarve. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any other questions? VCarve does? Okay. I added a cricket to my design process. Super quick to check out result of cars. Yeah, I have a cricket too. I've used it for a few things for the light show, but not really. I use it mainly to make T-shirts and stuff like that. But it's a fun machine to use too. Do I have a preference on the flutes? Yes, I do. Once we get into Fusion, I have what's called templates that I've used to set the preference because there's either climb or conventional milling. So, but and that's another thing that a long time ago Jackie taught me about the climb and convention, and basically it's the direction to cut, and basically with the Coro, it leaves the cleaner edge on the prop versus the stock. And the difference between a negative and a positive value on the extrusion is the biggest thing for me on that is creating the cam. Like if I use a pattern to generate holes, a lot of time the depending on how I create it, it won't automatically recognize the holes. Or if I am going to do as a lot of the vendors are now doing, if I want to draw out the pixel paths on it, I try to create my sketch on that. I believe I would say the zero plane on the same plane as the direction I extruded, because then I'm technically cutting the prop upside down, face down, I should say. So that makes you just got to keep the those values in mind with that. And no STL. Where do I source my source materials? A lot of the materials I have are from Amazon. Like I've been buying smaller sheets of Coro from Amazon when I had my X carb, and the big sheets that I just recently got, I actually got from a guy who ordered them from Home Depot, and he sold his machine, so I bought his material. James uses a Cricut to validate hole spacing. James, what do you use to draw the hole spacing? Oh, okay. Use Fusion to do that. Well, I'll have to get with you on that because I know when I have, yeah, some sign shops have. I have tried. Yep. Same thing with the U line also. Right. I've gotten there's a couple vendors here in Florida. I believe there's even one here in Daytona. I just haven't had time to talk to anybody. But yeah, James, I'll have to get with you about that. You're using Cricut. I want to get more into that. All right, any more questions before we decide? Well, before we, I am struggling in the morning. Before we get into the actual demo, export vector image, export as a vector image, and Cricut can do outline. Add. Oh. Yeah, I'll have to get with you on that. We can do more questions after too. All right, so here's Fusion. I got a couple files that I've already set up, and mainly this one will be for the parameters demonstration, and this was just playing around. So generally what I start is I'll start with just a sketch. The sketch in your CAD CAM is your main thing, and I always select my XY plane. And the reason is I use that to control on my CAM side. You have to tell it what direction is X, Y, and Z. So if I use my X is left and right, Y is front, back, and Z is up and down. So if I keep it consistent here, when I run it to the cam through the controller, it does what I expect it to do, and maybe not reverse. So I'm just gonna do a freehand shape of a, where is the tool? Spline tool. And one thing with Fusion is usually you want to start at this origin. So I'm just gonna like freehand a shape here. I don't know really what I'm making, just freehanding something. Hopefully it'll be neat. Let's come back around. Looks a little weird. No, I don't think that's gonna work. Let's start over. Let's kind of do like a weird triangle shape, I guess. All right, so we have this shape here. And generally what I do from here is I want this to be, if I want this to be my outside line of it, then I'll do what's called an offset. And so I can just I could select my curves and offset. And generally I like to leave a 1/2 inch border. So you can see I can use my original shape as the outline, or I can hit this flip and now I can, this newer red line will be the outline. And that's how I typically do it, is I'll create the shape I want and then do an offset to create the new outline. And from there, I'm literally just going to draw for this one circle. I'll make it 12 millimeter. That's worked for me every single time. Good fit. And now what I used to do here that, like I said, I just learned this year is I would draw another circle and I would dimension it. And then I would dimension the distance between the two circles like this. And then I would rinse and repeat until I got all the way back around. And I know what I like to do is like on sharper corners or stuff that needs more detail, I would add a smaller spacing to give it more, so it would stand out better and you can easily tell. If you're doing 2-inch spacing around certain things and the shapes aren't consistent, it'll look, I think, a little weird. If you have a nice, say like a rectangle, maybe with some rounded corners, you can do a set spacing all the way around it and it'll look good. Like I said, that's how I used to do it. The way I do it now is we're actually done with the sketch. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna make it a 3D part. So I'm gonna click these two profiles. And as you see, it wants me to go up. And I'm gonna go ahead and go up. And I'll go 10 millimeters. So now you see I have this model with one hole in it. So to get the rest of the holes, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna do a pattern. Fusion likes to turn your sketch off after you create models. So I'm gonna take this pattern on path and I'm gonna pick that hole. And the path is gonna be my line here. And basically what I can do is I can just drag this out. Right now it's only gonna do 3. And I could change this to either extent, which is the distance, or I can do spacing. And like, so I can say I want these to be 2 inches apart. So now every single one of these holes is gonna be 2 inches apart, and then I'm just gonna give it a quantity. So I will say 50. I don't know if that's gonna be enough or not. It's not. It might be around 100 or so. No, looks like 100's too much. So it looks like 76 is a good fit. The spacing between these two holes is probably not gonna be perfect. I like to use a formula, which you can also do. So I will actually measure this path and then use a formula saying I want X amount of pixels along that. So if I hit OK, it's got to compute it now. You'll see we have this shape with all our holes in it. So now from here, you could take 2 approaches. What you could do is, what I like to do is I like to create a new sketch, and I'm going to create it on this 3D thing, this on the face of this part, and I'm going to do what's called projection, which is going to find all these points and add them to the sketch, right? So now if I finish the sketch, I could right click this, save as DXF, and I'll just name it VCS demo. And so now I could print that out, tape it to a piece of Coro, cut it by hand, or we're also going to use it to create our model, X model, later on. Now for the cut this on a machine, I would literally go from my design to manufacture space, and then I'm going to create a setup here, and my stock says relative size. I like to always use a fixed size, or I'll actually create a model sometimes. So we'll go 63 by 40. And I'm going to change the height to match the material because we don't need to machine any thickness off. And I like to use the bottom left corner for my coordinate system. So I would come down here and pick this corner. As you see, X is left and right, Y is front to back, and Z is up and down. So now the machine knows where this part is, but it doesn't know what to cut. So like I said, I use templates here. So we'll use this one here. I already have a tool selected in here. The geometry, it doesn't like that. So what I'll do is I will select pocket recognition. I want to include holes. And I usually set the minimum quarter radius to 0.1 because I've had issues where it doesn't pick up things if I don't. And we'll see if it picks up the holes. It does not look like it did. Yeah, it says no contours. I've had hit and miss with the pocket recognition. Let me see if I can edit it. Oh, I didn't select the body. That probably would help too. Let's try that now. No. See, I've had a lot of hit and miss on this lately with the updated versions of Fusion, where it doesn't pick up the holes for whatever reason. All right, so that's not going to work. So, but what you can do is I could literally go in and pick each hole. I could pick these holes. So I could go through, pick them all. Ideally, I wouldn't have to do that. Ryan, the extrusion, that could be the difference too. I've noticed that. Or using patterns, sometimes it doesn't pick up the pattern holes. This time, even it didn't pick up my starter hole. So then I typically go, I cut from the top all the way to 1,000th below to make sure I get through my material. And I'm trying to find the conventional versus climb. Because I know they have changed some terminology. And I'm not seeing it. I don't see it. It used to have a conventional versus climb in this operation, but I don't see it anymore. But that could this I don't think it's the competition. No. It might be this sideways. They've just changed it left or right. And basically what that's going to do is just, it's going to change the way the tool is interacting with the material. So if you cut more towards your stock versus your prop, you'll have a cleaner finish. All right, so now if we hit OK, it's going to generate a tool path, and we can simulate it here. Let me turn off the model. So here's the cutter, and so now if I hit play, it's actually going to simulate cutting these holes. And on top of that, I do a template for my exterior. Turn my models back on. I go back in here and it doesn't like the template does not like having the pre-made geometry. It always has a problem with it. But all I do is pick the bottom contour of this, and then if I want tabs, I set my tab distance to 0 usually, and then I will manually add tabs by clicking here. Usually on a shape like this, I can only add tabs at certain points. Like say if there's a difference, there's a control point on each spline, or I have to manually add points. So what I could just do is just tell it to add a tab, say every 8 inches. And you'll see here, it puts a tab in there. And the reason you want the tabs is so the part doesn't come free from the material while you're cutting it, and then it will actually start cutting on the edge if it slips out of place. So let's just increase this because we don't want a lot of tabs. We just need a few tabs, because the more tabs you put in, the more tabs you have to cut off later. And if you look, I have my tab height about halfway up the material. Poro's hollow, so there won't be a lot there. There'll be more on the bottom edge. So usually, I usually use like a razor blade. You can cut it off pretty quick. So now if I hit OK on that, we'll actually have a full setup of cutting this part. So if we simulate the whole thing, we'll go through and we'll cut our holes. And the nice thing about this, it shows you what step it's on. This bar tells you, like, this is first operation, this is second operation. And it's literally just going to go around here and cut this out. And then click on statistics. It'll tell me how much machine time it's going to take. This will tell me the machine's position, how fast I'm cutting, what type of operation it's doing, if it's using rapid speeds or it's using the actual cut speed that you requested. For cam's sake, yes, I normally use contour. You can actually there are other options, and I've used it. Like I believe there's like bore. I believe bore is another way you could do like the holes, but generally I do contour. You could do adaptive clearing, but adaptive clearing won't just cut the perimeter of like the hole. It'll cut the whole hole out. It'll just machine away all the material. Versus if you do a contour, it's just going to go outside the perimeter of the hole, and you'll have a little tiny piece in the middle that usually pops out. No problem, Ryan. So we've created a part here. I mean, a prop. So let's put it into X lights. Let's go back to design. Oh, I did the, okay. I don't remember where I saved my DXF. Yeah, I saved it where I didn't want it. We'll put it in downloads. Okay, so now to create, say, the model for this prop, and this is a very simple prop, so it wouldn't take long to actually do. I like to use David Peace's Light Show Hub model builder, and I'll literally just go in here and I'll import the DXF. And you see it puts these holes in here. And then the nice thing about this is I could say, I get to pick what's the start. So I could literally go over here and I could say, this is my first hole. And then I could go back and just continue to number them. The cut, I cut the outside. I don't cut the inside. On Fusion, I know like on, I think on VCarve and stuff like that, you tell it where the bit cuts. On Fusion, you just tell it what you want cut, and it will compensate for the size of the bit. Another thing to remember while we're numbering these is on the CAD CAM side with, like, say, square edges. A round bit can cut a square edge on the outside. It cannot cut it on the inside. And if I have a little bit of time, I could probably draw up a quick demo of that. If I don't know if anybody is having issue understanding that, but it's just a thing that you would want to remember for designing. So say I was carving out like a tune 2 sign, and I do rounded edges on the outside. Let's say on the inside, I want to use like a P5 panel. I can't cut a perfect corner on the inside. All right, so now I've numbered all these pixels. You could create submodels from here, or you could do it, say, inside X lights, and then literally I could just take this, I could export the X model. And then I could go into my layout here. No, I think it's import, right? Yep. Go to import. I go to my downloads. And so here I have my custom prop inside X lights. Now, say I have we'll do that. We'll do the corner thing real quick. And it's got to think. So now if I modify this, say I have this square in here. Fusion's not being nice. So now if I go back to my manufacturer and I want to cut that out, see, I would duplicate this one because I want to use tabs. Where'd duplicate go? And with Fusion, the order these are in is the order it will cut. So like you want to do your holes first before you would actually cut your perimeter. Let's get rid of that. Let's turn the models back on. And so if I click this, since I did a design change, I wanted to update the tool paths. So now if I cut this, let's turn the model off, showing the stop. You see this has a rounded edge here. So on the inside, you can never get a square edge. The way you could get around that is you could use a really small bit, and you'll have a really narrow edge corner there, or a round over. But you can't do it. This is using an 1/8 of an inch bit, so you have to use something like say a 1/16 or 32nd to get this less. As you see, this outside edge is perfectly square. All right, so I believe we've covered everything that I was trying to cover. Is there any other questions? Yeah, I did a video, I think earlier this year or late last year on this very similar topic, and I had a little more time to go into details. Like I know on my video, I uh, created a prop from scratch. I did one where you took like an SVG file and used it as your outline, which is like how I created my ghost. Thank you. Yeah, but I had a little more time. And like my first year that I did the Mega Mini, I had a little more time also. I actually included video of machining and things like that. How to hold the Coro down? I actually use staples. I have my waste board is MDF, and I really take like a standard. I use a Ryobi battery powered stapler, and I don't remember the staple length, but I just staple the corners and the middle of the outside edges, and I've never had a problem. I know others just screw it down. Yes, the light show hub model does give an X model. You would just number the you basically number your pixels, and then you can create submodels or singing faces directly in there, or you can just use it to create the pixel layout and then do your submodels and singing faces inside of X lights. Yes, in Fusion, that is really easy. I can show you that pretty quick if I can get to the right window. Um, let's see. Oh yeah, manufacturing design. Let's just edit this sketch here. And say I just draw a 20 by 20 rectangle, and we'll put a circle here, and we will put it, let's do half an inch away from the edges. And I can literally go here now to create, and I can do a rectangular pattern. I select my hole. Generally I'll use spacing. And the distance will go this way. I'll drag it out, and we'll just go, say 20, does 20 work? 20 works, right? And then I drag this direction, and I'll do the same thing where I want that spacing, 20. And just like that, you have a matrix. And then from here, I literally just finish the sketch up. Let Fusion think a minute. And then I can extrude this. Simply click in the profile. And now I have a 3D model of the matrix panel. One thing I will say about doing like a matrix panel like this is, oh, I know I forgot now. I forgot to do the parameters in 3D stuff. All right, this is just a little spacer, 1/4 inch inside diameter, and I think 1/2 inch outside diameter, and it's 1 inch tall, right? So now I could literally take this body for 3D printing, and I could go up here to File, 3D Print, and if I have I could have go directly to Cura, or I could save it just as an STL. And then you could just take the STL file and go to your printer. But the thing I really wanted to show you was the parameters. As you see, I have it as a half inch. Like, so I use these pre-made parameters, right? So now I change this, say I want it to be a 1/4 inch long. I only just change that number, and you see the model just automatically updates. Or maybe I just need a smaller inside hole. I could just change it. Maybe I don't want this as thick. I could change it. And just that fast, I have a new model. What about doing it with a custom thing I made? Actually, this kind of does that. So I did a spline shape. I added the pattern, and then I did that same rectangular pattern, and I kind of did it where it would fit in the area. Multiple paths to make a multi-layer pattern. I'm not 100% sure on what you're saying, but yeah, you could just offset a shape several times to do that. Yeah, you could do that. You could just do, say, an offset, like say, how much time we got? We got 5 minutes. We can do it real quick. If I did a rectangle, we'll do a square, say. If I did it like, say, 10 by 10, I would do a star, but it takes a minute to draw a star. So now I can offset this and say I offset it 1 inch. And then I offset it 2 inches. And so on. The parameters are pretty easy. You go up and modify, change parameters, and like you just click this plus button and you type a name, and then the expression is a default value or a formula. The key thing is, and then when you dimension things, you'll just use that. Instead of saying the spacer's outer diameter is 0.2 inches, you put, like I named it OD. You just type OD, and it uses that. But anyway, for that pattern, you would literally just do that same, like create your first hole, say here, and then do the same thing here, and then use that pattern after you have a 3D model. Because I think for pattern on path, you have to have a yeah, it has to be a 3D model for the pattern on path. Thank you. Any other questions? Still got a couple minutes. Probably time for one more quick question. Well, thanks for everybody for coming to the class, and I hope you learned something and can use it. Feel free to reach out to me if you would like the PowerPoint. You can just contact me and I can send it to you if you want. Check out my YouTube channel. Thank you. Yeah, I don't do a lot on there. I need to, but I plan on getting a little more into it, especially when I get my CNC up and running. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a good rest of the VCS and learn a lot and can do a lot with it.